political strategies ought to be facts, not emotions and not desires, but on facts. And it's not about effort to try to change something. It's not about giving it your all. So, you know, I think the strategy was not effective. I've been quoted as that ever since it was done. But I love the fact that he's trying. You know, and he hadn't been in a legislative body before. So I think, you know, when I first came to the Senate, I made a lot of mistakes in the Senate, and I was not very welcomed, and because I was seen as a radical. So I understand that. I think Michael Lee and his heart, or their hearts are great. They want to try to do the right thing, but the realism is that was a failed strategy from the start.
Here's Bunny from Parsons, Kansas, for Senator Tom Coburn. She's on our Republican line. Good morning.
That's close to Oklahoma.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am thinking that everyone has forgotten that we are a nation under God. I really think we should go back to some prayer. It seems that we need it. And I'm not a holy roller or anything like that, but we are a nation under God. And I admire Boehner for standing for what he thinks. I admire the president for standing for what he thinks. And Harry Reid, of course, the same. But he comes from Searchlight, Nevada. We need this searchlight to really light up the truth and to give people a chance to speak instead of just those men. We need probably some help from citizen advocates at this point, and Christian believers, and what our country really is about. We've left the Constitution. We've left our religious beliefs.
Apologies for that call. That was my fault, but Senator Coburn, go ahead.
Well, I would not disagree with what she said about looking towards a higher power to solve problems. I do that in my personal life. I think we need a renewal, not just a spiritual renewal. I think we need political renewal. You know, what I sit and see in the House and the Senate is how does this policy affect the next election, rather than how is this good policy for our children and the generations that follow. And I'm a pretty big skeptic, and known to be that, of the careerist mentality in Washington. But I think our press reinforces that, and our political system now reinforces long-term service. And I think what our founders, their vision for what would be in the Congress isn't people that have been here 30 years. It's people who have a real skill outside of politics and bring their learning from their life experiences to Washington for a short period of time and apply it to the problems of the country. And so, you know, I think we have a structural problem with who's here, and we have a spiritual problem in terms of our direction. And real leadership can create a vision for America that could maybe change that.
Peter from Pennsylvania, Democrats line. Good morning.
Good morning. I just want to bring one thing to my congressman, my senator here, is we have an election coming up in 13 months. When this plan goes through, this health plan, they'll have 13 months to see if it really works. If, in fact, this is such a bad plan, as the Republicans are saying, then the election will show that. We'll have the Senate be taken over by the Republicans. The Democrats will be lost in the Congress. Now the people will speak. The people will vote this thing out, not push it out or force it out. Yeah. And that's the way the American people work.
Thank you, caller.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. That's why I thought the strategy wasn't achievable in the first place. I'm not sure they'll see it by then. They certainly won't see the hidden costs, and they won't see delayed access by then. But he has a very good point. Is that's the other thing is I received a letter from the Liberty Foundation of America making that very point, is that the American people need to actually exert more power over Congress than Congress exerts over them, and that what we need is a greater awareness by everybody, and maybe a little bit less polarization in the news. Right now we have one group that listens to one set of news and another group, rather than people look at both sides to get perspective on what the other side is saying.
There's a story here about Senator Harry Reid calling him the GOP's new public enemy #1 because he's the man driving the party's hard bargain.
Who's that?
That's Harry Reid.
Calling who that? Ted Cruz?
No, it's there. This is the story kind of relating Harry Reid as the GOP's, enemy -- 1.
Harry and the enemy. Harry and I had a conversation this week about how do you get out of this. And so it's, look, again, the press loves big fights. They exacerbate them. They make them look worse than what they are because it sells news. And it doesn't matter what it is, they're always trying to stir up a contrast or a difficulty or a difference between people so they can get a story. I would tell people, other than maybe 5 or 10 people in the Senate is a very cordial place personally. And so what you read in the papers, there's not a lot of animosity in the Senate. There's not a lot of lack of relationship in the Senate. Matter of fact, there's some good bipartisan relationships in the Senate. The question is those aren't expanded on by leadership to make something positive happen for the country.
Baltimore, Maryland. Jennifer is up next, Independent Line.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, I'm a federal employee who is working for free right now. I guess I'm supposed to be essential. And I had to have the talk with my kids. Before I was a federal employee, I had my own business, and I had no health insurance. Once I became employed by the federal government, I was able to get health insurance, and luckily I did because I was diagnosed with breast cancer a couple years later. And for people like me who have pre-existing conditions, I can understand those people being angry about what's going on in Congress right now. But yeah. I just wanted to say, too, the Republicans, I understand your side because I vote both Republican and Democrat, but you can't have a reduced budget. They wanted $1.2 trillion. They settled at what you wanted. You can't have a reduced budget, repeal of Obamacare, and whatever else you were asking for a 6-week CR. That is ridiculous. I mean, you guys have to do better. Give us a budget so we can go to work.
I agree with you. First of all, you may not have heard the first part of the show, is leadership has failed to do the appropriation process, which gives the federal employees the flexibility. A CR binds you to what you were doing now 3 years ago. Rather than any forward vision, any changes in letting people make good decisions for us as citizens of the country. So I agree. The appropriation process, and it's very straightforward why we don't have appropriation bills in the Senate, because they don't want to have to vote on amendments. And if you're a U.S. Senator, if you can't defend your vote on anything, pardon me, but you shouldn't be here. And so you shouldn't use the withdrawal of bills or limitation of amendments to keep you from having to cast a vote. I can defend every vote I've ever cast in the Senate. I think most of them were right, some of them were wrong in retrospect, but I can still defend what I was doing and what I was thinking at the time. So I agree with, first of all, let me thank you for working for our country. Appreciate what you do. We have a great federal workforce, and we pay them well, and they have good benefits. What we should do is give them some flexibility to do what's best for the country.
What should be done about current sequestration figures? Sequestration
is you leave the numbers there and allow the agent. No, again, this is a choice the Obama administration made. Mm-hmm. When sequestration started, they had the ability to do what Ronald Reagan did once during sequestration, which is carry it by department or agency rather than down by line item. What the president chose to do is, through OMB, is carry it by line item. So that means even the worst stinky program that everybody knows isn't working got cut, and the good programs that everybody knows is working got cut, and they got cut the same. Whereas if they could have developed flexibility down into the sub-agency, where they could have made decisions to not spend on something that's not effective and spend, which begs the question, why hadn't Congress fixed all those things that aren't working? Which comes back as the problem is Congress. And the problem has been Congress. As long as you have a Congress of career politicians that is leery of making hard choices because they're more interested in getting reelected than fixing the problems of the country, this isn't going to change. And we have $350 billion. If you include Medicare in terms of the fraud in it, and you take the discretionary budget, we could still squeeze another $200 billion out of that just by eliminating duplicative programs, according to GAO. You have 47 job training programs for non-disabled. You have 53 for disabled. 47 different job training programs run throughout the country. Not one of them has a metric on it that says whether it's successful, and all but 3 duplicate them. And I can give you a list of another 265 sets of programs that hadn't been oversighted by the Congress. The GAO has recommended that we oversight. So it's the laziness and the lack of taking something away from somebody that's getting something, even though we're throwing the money away. Congress hadn't done it. So we're not going to solve that problem until we get rid of the career politicians in Washington, Republican and Democrat alike.
Janice, up next from Mississippi, Republican line. Janice, good morning.
Good morning.
You're on.
Hello.
Yes, my problem is that everybody is calling this a Republican shutdown because they don't change their minds. They're telling the people exactly what the people want told as far as it's concerned. This is not a Republican shutdown. This is a care for this country that our bills are paid. They can't be paid with Obamacare. Our country has lost every bit of the credibility that it has ever had because somebody wants to play like a bunch of little kids up there. They're playing with the lives of people. We have people here in Mississippi that drive Cadillacs and on welfare. This is totally ridiculous. Our money, and we know very well that we have probably 5 or 6 times the amount of people who put money into Medicare over the years. Where's our money going?
Thanks, caller.
Well, she's actually highly inaccurate about Medicare. The average person gets out 3.5 times more out of Medicare than they put in, which is why Medicare has to be fixed, which is why we have $124 trillion of unfunded liabilities and only $94 trillion worth of assets in our country. You know, the fact is Medicare is the best deal that ever happened in America as far as your investment and what you get back out of it, and we can't afford it. And if we don't change it, what you're going to do is see a really large decline in standard of living of our kids because the numbers don't work and the taxes. And it's typical. When Medicare Part B started, the individual paid 50% of the cost of it. And the career politicians through the years have lowered your percentage that you have to pay because they can give you something, but they didn't create a tax revenue to pay for it, just like the Republicans didn't create a tax revenue to pay for Medicare Part D, the prescription drug. So what we've done is we've transferred all that cost to the next generation. And well, guess what? The bill's due right now. The bill is due. And so the debt ceiling's coming up. And if anybody out there that's listening had a credit card that you have maxed out on and you haven't demonstrated credit worthiness by paying your bills and getting your expenses in line, do you think the credit card company is going to expand further your ability to borrow more money? They're not. And that's what the debt ceiling is going to be all about. It's going to be the president asking us, Even though we haven't solved our problems with Medicare, with Social Security or Medicaid, even though we aren't living within our means in our discretionary budget, we need to go get a higher level credit card. Well, I've never voted for a debt ceiling increase because I think it is the addiction that you can always raise the debt limit that keeps us from making the hard choices about our spending. And if you want to see our economy grow, have the President and the Congress lead on a bipartisan solving Medicare problems, solving Medicaid problems, solving Social Security problems, and cleaning up the Defense Department as far as efficiency and getting rid of the waste. And you'll see this country boom because the confidence will be restored.
One more call. This is Lou, Maryland, on our Democrats line.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I think the senator is being disingenuous when he says that he knows the outcome of Obamacare. No one knows what the outcome of Obamacare is going to be. Let's let the program run its course and let's see what happens. I work in the IT industry, and whenever we roll out a new application or a server, there's glitches, there's hiccups. You fix them, and then you move on. If there are problems with the Affordable Care, we need to fix them and move on. The American publics have had a referendum on this. We voted overwhelmingly for President Obama and not for Mitt Romney. Americans want affordable health care. We've had a referendum on that. I think that we need to give this a chance to let it run. I think Speaker Boehner has a continuing resolution bill sent over from the Senate. All he has to do is bring it to a vote in the House. It will pass, and we will be out of this shutdown.
Well, I thank you for the criticism. I'll relate to your IT industry. Right now, we have a healthcare system where everybody thinks somebody else is paying the bill. We don't have transparency in it, which we're not going to have with this bill. And what we're going to do is continue down the road of not making individuals accountable for their own health care. And when that happens is when everybody thinks somebody else is paying the bill, whether you're on Medicare or you have insurance or if you're on Medicaid. And what that has caused, and we know this through studies, $1 in $3 we spend in health care in this country doesn't help anybody. And we exacerbated that with this. So I'm not being disingenuous. I have a lot of years of experience of seeing this system work, and it goes totally against any free market principles that will work. Will it add some additional coverage? Sure. What is the cost? What's the quality going to be on this? Where's the accountability going to be, and where's the transparency? So that may be true, but it's like saying, you know, if you keep doing the same thing in an IT program and don't fix the inner loop, and you keep sending it out, guess what? You're going to keep having problem with the IT program, and that's the problem. We're using the same system. What we should have is a system that's totally transparent, both to price and outcomes. There's nothing that forces that in this system. There should be a refundable tax credit for every American so that we all have the same access to health care. There should be a maximum exposure that you can have so that the insurance can't game you. Those are things and there should be an incentive to save and make good decisions for your health care and hold physicians accountable. You know, I delivered hundreds of Amish babies. They didn't have any health insurance. They were the best purchasers in the world. And the cost of caring for them was less than the cost of caring for everybody else because they were really good consumers, and they challenged everything that you did to make sure you weren't doing something that wasn't necessary. So when we cared for Amish, it cost a whole lot less because first of all, we had to stop and answer the questions, and they were really involved in their health care. Number two is they didn't want any money spent that didn't absolutely have to be spent. And so there was informed consent and real efficiency in the health care delivered to them. And they didn't have insurance. It was coming out of their pocket. So they were really interested in why, what, and how you were doing. We don't have that today. And that's the only way you're going to drive this excess cost. We're not competitive in a lot of areas in this country on our health care simply because we have a third-party payment system that doesn't make you responsible for your health care.
Senator Tom Coburn, Republican of Oklahoma, thanks for your time.
Good to be with you.
Coming up, the first of two segments, taking a look at